Hello, Twitch. Welcome to another episode of Howdy Partner. I am David Daniels, Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. With me is James Spencer. How you doing, James?
Hello, I am doing well. It's a actually beautiful day here in Seattle. I might go out after this. I'm looking forward to it. Um, so David, uh, good to be here. What is Howdy Partner?
So
I don't
yeah,
know.
Howdy
Never been here.
Partner. Howdy Partner is our weekly show on Twitch where we invite AWS partners to show their interesting and cool solutions and give us all a taste of what they're doing. So really excited today. We've got a really cool and interesting partner on the air today. So uh, Heimdall Data. Have you ever heard of them?
Nice. Yeah. They're a really cool partner. They have a database proxy solution that you can and using. Actually, I'm not an expert. Erik will explain it later in a little bit, but uh, using caching, you're able to use tons and tons of connections at once without even changing your code. At least that's what a little birdie told me. So I'm actually looking forward to kind of seeing that and just seeing how strong that can be. Like the no code changes part is huge, to me at least. I like things that simplify life.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds awesome to me. So yeah, certainly we have Erik with us from Heimdall Data, and really cool. I'm excited about this. So let's bring Erik on and let's meet him.
All right. Hello.
Hi, Erik.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No
Thank
problem.
you for
Welcome
coming.
to Howdy Partner, Erik. We're
Howdy.
excited to have you. Howdy, yes. So, one thing that I do believe is really cool about having you on our show today is that the month of May is, for those of you that don't know, is Military Appreciation Month. So, huge shout out to the military. We appreciate you every day, but for the month of May, Military Appreciation Month. And Erik, actually, well, you can tell your story and I'll let you get into it, but veteran from the Air Force. So thank you for your service and welcome to the show.
Yep. Well, thank you. And yeah, before I even get into the my Air Force anecdotes and such, which actually lead into caching and lead to the origin of almost my entire career dealing with caching in one level or another. Starting off with my background, like a lot of technologists, I got started very early. Learned how to code in C when I was 12. Although even before that, started off with like a VIC 20 and a Commodore 64. So started real early, but I'm definitely dating myself with these names.
Yeah, when I was 12, uh, I don't even know. My first language I learned when I was like 35. I think when I was 12, I was still trying to learn how to read. Period. So
Yeah, so it was fun. Even before I started to learn how to code, really, my father had coded a program to help talking about reading, uh, learning to spell, and it like tied in on the Commodore 64 with the audio chips, and it would try to pronounce the word to kind of tell me what to type in, so it wasn't giving me visual clues. Well, I at the time learned how to break into the program because they wanted to see what my score was when I was done, and I modified the code to say that I got everything right even when I didn't. But I think that gave me the bug for technology, and it that just started the whole cascade, teaching me how to program, taught myself how to program, and then all kinds of other things. Although unfortunately, when I got to college, I ended up with a situation where I was spending time on this thing called the internet, and I was spending way too much time on it, and my grades suffered as a result. So after 3 semesters, my parents were like, "You're wasting your time and our money, and we're not going to pay for it anymore." So I joined the military.
yeah,
So
wasting time on the internet. I've never heard that story in my life. That's the first time ever, Cap.
Yes, but considering that
Struggle with it.
it predated the World Wide Web, yeah, that's a little
Oh
bit
yeah,
different
yeah,
than most people. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I was spending time on it when things like FTP were like the protocol du jour that you could use for downloading files and sharing stuff. In fact, when I was in college, before I got pulled out, in my third semester, the dorm had 10 megabit Ethernet to the dorm. Okay. So I was able to use that to set up my OS2 system as a pirate FTP server.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think that that while things like that aren't exactly encouraged today, it definitely got my interest going. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
when I joined the military, I joined as a computer programmer. So it definitely helped out, and I continued on from there.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Back
Yeah.
in the day, uh, back in the day, I'm sure you could probably get away with it a lot more easily too, like changing everything like that. I'm sure now it's like, nope, you get caught so fast. Sorry, Dave, I keep cutting you off. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I think that's cool that you could join the military as a programmer and get through that way. So
Yeah.
that's really neat.
So when I joined, once I got out of tech school and such, I'm sure, David, you were in the military as well, going through tech school and everything. Uh, the first job that I had was working to maintain the configuration of a system that, I kid you not, was called ICI for Interactive Communications Interface. And it was a system that was used by Air Force Supply in order to communicate between base mainframes and Unix systems. So, as an example, they could use ICI to ask other bases, "Do you have this part? We need a part for a plane." And if they had spare parts, then they could reply back saying, "Hey, yeah, we've got that." And then direct ship from one base to another in order to leverage the supply system better. So, but the communication between all these Unix systems or all these Unisys mainframes, the configuration was managed manually at each base, and effectively is kind of a peer-to-peer type system. And they all had to know about each other in order to communicate. So my job was simply to manage that configuration and help to correct configuration errors, etc. So I'm like, you know what? Once I understood what all the rules were, I was like, why don't we write a program for that? And my supervisor was like, no, we don't want you spending your time doing that. Well, he could tell me what to do on duty, but I wrote a program to do it off duty. And I brought it in one day and presented it to him, and it was like, you can feed in all the configurations and it'll spit out a list of everything that needs to be updated at each location in order to correct the setup. And from there, I ended up basically killing my job, which irritated supervisors because they get rated based on how many people that they have working for them. Okay, just the way the military works. And I got transferred into another group. Maybe 6 months later, my former supervisor got a medal for improved efficiency. I wonder how that happened.
Yep. I know that all too well.
But once I was in that other group, they were a lot more accepting of thinking out of the box and getting things done. So I think that it was a good move where I was not under a direct leadership that were more concerned about how many people they had under them versus just getting the job done. So they like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's start with Heimdall Data. What is Heimdall?
Okay. So Heimdall Data is, as you led in with, is a database proxy. We support multiple databases. There's a lot. There are other proxies on the market, but or in open source, but they generally only support one product, like MySQL or Postgres. I don't even know of any other proxy aside from the RDS proxy, which we can talk about in a moment if you want to, that supports SQL Server. But most of those proxies are very limited in functionality, and we have, as a commercial product, a lot more functions. And the functions that we do implement are generally much more fit for purpose. So a lot of other things don't guarantee consistency, whereas we have the capability of guaranteeing data consistency. So that's a huge point of differentiation for us. So that's the overall idea of what it is. Obviously, we can get into the details. I don't want to make this a straight up product pitch for everything. So we'll kind of go into the demo and stuff later once we go through all the
Yeah,
other topics.
for sure, absolutely. So, and I got to ask, how did you come up with the name? It's super cool name for your product. I really like how it all ties together. So,
Okay. Well, the name Heimdall Data, which you can see right above me, Heimdall, as many people in the audience may know, is from Norse mythology. My last name, if you look it up, Erik Brandsberg. Brandsberg is actually an old Norwegian family name. So my grandfather came from Norway when he was 16, and Brandsberg was it based on old or Norwegian family namings. You were generally named for where you were born, and Heimdall was the family farm that many generations of family members had been born in. In Norway, it's actually considered what's called a heritage name. So people cannot just change their name to Brandsberg without family approval already, unless they're marrying into the family.
Hmm.
So it's considered historic. Once upon a time, people changed their name away from like Brandsburg because that's an old farmer's name, but now it has history, so it's more appealing to have something unique. And there are very few Brandsburgs in the world. There's only one other Erik Brandsberg, and he's my cousin. So, but going back to the Scandinavian heritage, well, when looking for a name, I was looked at Scandinavian folklore, and well, a proxy is kind of a gateway from one device to another. You could call it a bridge. Well, Heimdall, if you know your Marvel MCU history, there Heimdall is also a character in the Thor movies. Heimdall is the guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, leading between heavens and earth. So if you look at the logo again, taking a little logo design methodology from Amazon, it has the smile from A to Z because originally as a bookstore or a bookseller. Well, Heimdall is the bridge, let's get this right,
Yeah.
connecting all data.
okay,
Oh,
all right, that's
okay.
cool.
Oh, I like no, no, I like that.
Okay.
That's a literal like light bulb moment. That's actually pretty clever. I like it. I do.
Yeah.
Legit.
Yeah, that is
So as a
awesome.
proxy, we're connecting the applications to their data. Yeah.
That's
So
That's
cool.
cool.
we
Yeah.
went through a couple of iterations. We have an old logo, but once we came up with this, it's like, you know what? This is just perfect. Okay. How it all connects together. It ties in my family history as well as what the product does. So, I mean, it has relevance.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I thought I understood it just by Heimdall and the bridge and everything, but that I completely missed that. I would have never gotten it until you explained it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it,
um,
it definitely makes the name more memorable.
yeah, for sure. Well, so I guess what are the benefits that you've been having as an AWS partner, and would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, great. I mean, we are on the Howdy Partner Show, so let's talk about how the partner stuff works. I'm not sure if many of the people that are joining us or that watch this presentation are partners themselves, but it is very interesting in how working with Amazon has worked. And while I won't name names, I will say that working with Amazon as a cloud partner has been a lot more productive for us than working with other cloud partners. So, just as an example, uh, AWS has well, you know what? You guys are solution architects. Okay. You work with customers in order to help solve their problems and bring in the right technologies in order to ensure that a customer's company is productive, that they get out of Amazon what they need to get for their business. So we've been able to work with solution architects like you guys, although customer solution architects, in order to educate them. And instead of spending huge amounts of money advertising our product out to end customers, we have educated the trusted advisors that tell companies what they need in order to solve their problems. And when you guys, as solution architects, bring in a partner, it lends credibility. So, working with the entire solution architect team, both the generalist and the database solution architects, and educating you guys has been very efficient use of our time in order to be able to market our product and get it to the right people. So, that's just one aspect of it. Another aspect of working with Amazon has been the marketplace. So that provides us with a route where we can very easily deliver product to customers. And that brings in the billing aspects, where AWS, the whole billing methodology, we think is very reasonable with how it's done, so that it makes more sense often to route customers through the marketplace for delivery of the product and billing than trying to do it ourselves. Okay, you guys handle the collection, everything else. And since Amazon is already a vendor that's approved for these companies, it can reduce the red tape of getting a product into a Fortune 500 company, because we don't necessarily have to go through the vendor approval process because it's going through Amazon. Any questions on that?
No, I was gonna say that makes a lot of sense. I'm not on the sales side. Um, first of all, I was gonna say what you said is a huge part of the reason we do this show. It's not just for I mean, we target developers and builders, but it's also for our internal teams to be able to do, like you said, be able to educate our internal teams to be able to sell partner products, like you said earlier. But also, yeah, I didn't think of it that way necessarily as, yeah, a Fortune 500 company requiring all that red tape, like you said. But since you're a partner, they go, oh, well, okay, now maybe we'll just do one check because AWS already checked them out. So yeah, that's legit for real.
Exactly. And then another piece that has been extremely useful in working with everybody, and this ties together with working with the solution architects. But the solution architects are tasked with generally providing content out via, I'm assuming that this is part of your general, you have to do a certain number of shows or provide certain amount of blog posts, whatever. There's amount of outbound activity that the solution architects are tasked with providing. Well, we work with our solution architects to sometimes create new features that benefit the customers that they are working with, and then second, documenting those features in conjunction with them as part of blog posts that go onto the Amazon blog, AWS blog. So that is an extremely powerful route for marketing our product, even outside of Amazon, because the Amazon blog gets such high SEO ranking that when a blog post targets something that someone is looking for, it's going to show up on the first page. So as a small vendor, that means we just work with you guys to write content that answers, how do I do this for your customers? And magically, that filters out to the entire market.
I like that, magically.
Okay.
It's a magical place.
We don't have to hire like SEO vendors to, we can get you on this electronic magazine or that electronic magazine and link farms and all this other stuff that's just so sketchy. Yeah, it's literally just a page that tells you how to solve a problem, and it gets ranked well. Great. Fine.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's one of the things that I really like and enjoy about what we do here, is that, we see all the numbers. We see that, say something like a blog post can help partners and impact them, but actually hearing it from you, like how impactful it's been, like that's just really cool. I think for all of us that do this, it's just really cool to hear that.
Yeah. And I alluded to it a little bit, or I mentioned it a little bit earlier. The final piece is actually helping to develop the product and mature it. So with the solution architects that we work with, they often bring us problem child customers that you guys have within your own infrastructure, that the products that you're delivering cannot solve the problem for, or it's not an appropriate fit, dealing with their database connectivity and performance. And because we have in the past delivered many features that in the past that that solve problems, we're being brought more people, more customers to talk to about, can we solve this? And that allows us to get insight on what the problems are that people are facing, which then feeds into itself on, okay, we can create a solution for that problem and then start delivering it. So an example of that was the RDS team had delivered a new feature for RDS global deployments. And customers want to be able to have, say, one endpoint that allows you to connect to your data infrastructure, and that endpoint name tracks no matter where the right node is for the cluster, whether it fails over from one region to another. They want to be able to do to route read queries to local read-only nodes for improved performance. And with the delivery of the global RDS feature set, there was no way to do that without additional programming and coding logic into the application where it could find where the right node was. There was no single endpoint you could connect to. So a solution architect brought that to us and said, hey, can you solve this problem? So we did. Okay. We actually probe the API layer of Amazon in order to discover the entire global cluster. And we keep track of that in order to know where the writable primary node is for the cluster. And if it fails from one region to another, we are aware of that, in fact, by the time the new node is promoted. So it minimizes downtime during that whole promotion process. But going back to the point on this is, by working with a solution architect team, we're getting insights on what these problems are that customers are facing. And we're able to leverage that in order to help build our product and make it better for the customers.
Yeah, that's one of our definitely we have our customer obsession is one of our what is it called, like tenants, values, whatever, customer obsession and working backwards.
Yeah.
I mean that's sounds like dictionary definition of that. Hey, tell us what the customers are complaining about and I'll find a way to make it better.
Yeah. Now that's not to say that there's not a little bit of conflict between the product sets of what Amazon is providing and what Heimdall is doing. So there is, for example, the RDS proxy. But it has a limited feature set and was primarily targeted at really helping, say, Lambda type function environments where you've got rapid generation of new software nodes that are establishing connections to the database, and they may be very short lived. The RDS proxy can handle the connection pooling for that. And you know what? If that's what you need, and we somehow got wind of it, and it's an Amazon customer, we're just going to point back to the RDS proxy team and say, you know what? Use that. Okay, because it's a lower barrier of entry product for getting online. We're looking for the higher value to us and to the customer features that aren't part of the RDS proxy feature set. So we're going to be customer obsessed as well, and that is just providing for what the customer wants. And if we're not the right fit, we've literally told the customers, go somewhere else, and here's what we suggest to solve your problem. So we like that as well.
Yeah. The other thing we talk about frequently, it's all products, but a really common one is services or like programming language or something. Right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
Heimdall, you can correct me. Heimdall will proxy 50 million connections, but if you don't need 50 million connections, maybe go with something that's not as beefy. You don't need it. So
Well, I mean, we can proxy huge amounts. We're designed from the ground up to be a scalable infrastructure. And again, this ties into all the services that Amazon provides that makes deploying a solution like ours even easier. So we have a CloudFormation template that allows you to deploy out an auto-scaling cluster of Heimdall proxies that will grow and shrink based on load during the day and help to ensure that there aren't any outages. And the fact that Amazon provides that makes it a lot easier compared with our trying to deploy into a customer premises. So the whole infrastructure comes together to really provide value to the customer.
So you had mentioned, in one of our previous communications, some of the pieces of the AWS ecosystem that you're most impressed with. You want to talk about those a little bit, Erik?
Oh, well, the one piece that we tie in to with, I'd probably say 80% of our Amazon customers will be Amazon Aurora. And the one thing that's been nice, well, for anybody that is not really familiar with the differences between Aurora and say just a open source RDS MySQL or Postgres is disk management is a lot easier. Snapshot management is nice. Promotion management. So whether you have a writable node or a reader node, it's a much easier to deal with Aurora than basically any other solution on the market that we have spent any significant time with. So we push our customers when they come to us. They may be using like RDS MySQL or RDS Postgres. But because Aurora works so well in conjunction with us, with some of our features, which we can get into the details of the features as we move forward. But because it works so well with these features, we really kind of push our customers to go to the Aurora route. And recently, even more, is another innovation that has come out of the Aurora team, and that is the so-called serverless v2 architecture. Now, I think everybody will agree, don't talk about serverless v1. Okay, it was an interesting experiment, but we'll assume that v1 never existed, and for some reason v2 was the first introduction of the serverless database. You guys okay with that? James, you're muted.
Well,
I'm a professional.
I caught you.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, yeah, that's fine. And typically, yeah, when we talk about Aurora serverless, we're talking about v2. Like we don't distinction, make the distinction, but chances are 99.9% of the time, if we're talking about serverless Aurora, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. So for anybody that is not aware of the serverless v2 architecture, it allows you to basically specify minimum and maximum compute capacity that you need for your database. And it allows it to size itself as needed, dynamically adding more capacity both in memory and in CPU, that allows you to be billed for what you need. Now, this is a great segue into the features of what Heimdall is providing and why serverless v2 and Aurora is such a great pairing with Heimdall. The first feature that we've mentioned is caching. Okay, so if you reduce the load on the database and you're only paying for what you need on the database, then you're reducing your database bill. Okay. And that's pretty intuitive, although the devil is in the details of how you do caching so that it is safe. And we can get into the intricacies of that in a moment. The second big feature that we provide that is hot for our customers, that and why it pairs with Aurora really well, is read-write split. So most applications that access a database are not designed to access more than one endpoint. They assume that the database that they're talking to, they can read from and write to, and that's it. One node. If it goes offline, the application is dead. So, but Aurora has great capabilities for adding read replicas, including serverless v2 read replicas. And then Heimdall can route the traffic, the read queries that are safe to go to the replica at runtime to those replicas. So we divide the traffic up so that it can scale across multiple nodes better. So if you've got a primary node and a standby node, because most people want a standby just in case something goes wrong, well, now you can leverage that standby node to reduce the load on your primary writer. And it is often the case that between caching and read-write split, we can reduce the load on your primary database node by 80%.
Seems good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So that allows you to scale better. There is one small issue with serverless v2, and that is because of the way that it's architected, you cannot get as large an instance running on serverless v2 under heavy load as you can if you have dedicated database instances. So there's a cap to how far that can go, whereas other instance types can go higher. Well, if you can split the traffic, guess what? That becomes less of an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So by using Heimdall to do that automatically for you, both offloading, caching, and read-write split, it allows you to scale using serverless v2 to a much higher performance level. Yet you still only pay for what you need.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I got it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, yeah, I think was this something that you wanted to show us, or did you have any kind of demonstration?
I do have a demo that I'll get into in a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
Now, there is another subtle piece to this that when we've explained to customers, they're like, "Dunk," the light goes on how it can solve problems. Okay. So we're talking about splitting the traffic between two different nodes, or two, like the primary writer and the primary reader. Okay. But what about traffic classification? Now, you have databases like Redshift that are designed for analytics, okay, but aren't that great for transactional workloads. A lot of customers will use a single database cluster for both transactional workloads, which need to be high performance, low latency, and then the analytical workloads that tend to be queries that can be very slow and very high CPU consuming on the database. But they're talking about one of the same basic data. They're just using it in different ways. Well, if you have an Aurora cluster and you have, say, one writer node and then two reader nodes, you don't have to use both reader nodes the same way. Okay. You can send your faster transactional queries to one of them, and the slow, heavy hitting queries that are going to slow down everything if they're on the same hardware to the other one. Say reporting queries, end of quarter reporting. Well, Heimdall can actually classify query patterns, learn which ones are fast and which ones are slow, and send them automatically to the different nodes. Okay. So as a result of that, you can use your Aurora cluster for mixed workload environments much more effectively without having performance problems when one of these heavy queries hit. Now, again, you tie this to serverless v2. Well, your reporting cluster may not get queries all the time, or your reporting node may not get queries all the time. Guess what? You just size it so that it can scale down to a really low level. When it needs to, it ramps back up. It can answer those heavy queries in a reasonable amount of time. And then effectively, when it's not needed, it goes and gets out of your way and you stop having a high bill for it.
Okay.
Okay. So once you have the technologies to split this traffic and send it to different places, you can start adding more and more layers of intelligence to how you handle things. Okay. This morning I was just on a call with a customer, and they were literally had a situation where they had a particular application that was connecting to the database, where they had lots of different users for different roles, and one of the roles was misbehaving. And we were able to apply an alternate configuration that changed how that user interacted with the database so that they weren't impacting the other users anymore. Okay. Lots of different knobs, lots of different features and such. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah. So we're not just a knife, we're a Swiss Army knife. And we've got the corkscrew, we've got the saw, we've got the magnifying glass so that you can see what's going on. Yeah. We've got a lot of different tools to solve different problems.
Yeah. Right tool for the right job, but if you're a Swiss Army knife, you got them all in one spot for sure.
So all of these different tools that you provide, how long would you say it takes for a customer to install this and get moving with Heimdall Data?
So we have a general evaluation process that we go through. What will normally happen, like, let's say that it comes through an Amazon SA, solution architect. We'll generally talk with the solution architect about what the problem is with that the customer is facing to make sure that we're not going to be wasting the customer's time even with being introduced. Then once we decide that it's probably a good fit, then the SA will make an introduction to us. We'll take the lead in working with the customer. Usually we'll install within a lower environment like a QA or staging environment in order to validate that everything works cleanly, that there's no problem. Uh, Honestly, that initial install for the initial evaluation happens usually within an hour. Okay.
Okay.
And we can actually have the application online in lower environment for testing of caching, read write split, whatever, within that hour. From there, it depends on the processes of the customer, how much due diligence they want to do on their testing and such. However, we do have some customers that have been in situations when they found us where they were basically, you know what, everything has gone to hell anyway. Okay, they're in a production outage type situation, and we've had customers that are online in production within that hour. Okay, we had a customer on Monday that was in production with an almost outage situation within 3 hours. Okay, and that was just this week.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but so you're kind of saying that the customer basically didn't have any sort of like DR or any sort of contingency, and you were able to jump in and fix that within that amount of time, basically.
Yeah.
Oh
Now,
wow. Okay.
it's normally not that short. I will
Yeah.
admit that. Okay, because most companies they're going to need approvals for making changes to their production environment,
Yeah.
etc. But when people are in an emergency situation, a lot of that just goes right
It goes
out
out
the
the window.
window. Okay.
Get it done and get it now. Get it up.
Okay. And when that happens, we're more than willing to jump in with them and just try to make things work.
It's like
Okay.
a results may vary type situation, but you certainly knocked it out of the park that time, and
Yeah.
can do again, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I mean, it's usually relatively quick. The more complex an environment, the more complex the applications are that are interacting with the database, then the longer it may take. And yes, sometimes there are bugs. We have to resolve the bugs and work with things. Caching and read write split are not easy technologies. We've worked with customers in order to make it as simple as possible and as safe as possible to turn them on. Just as an example, when dealing with caching, we have a so-called revalidate only mode where you can turn on caching, but we don't actually serve from the cache. we record in memory what we would have cached, and we decide what we would have served on a cache hit. But then we still go to the database, pull the result, and we compare the result we got from the database with what we would have served from the cache. And then we can automatically generate alerts if there's anything different. Okay. So that allows us to work with the customer and validate that, you know what, you have nothing in the background that's going to break caching. You can run your application in production if you want with the caching in this revalidate only mode and verify that we would have served the right content if caching were turned on completely. Okay, so that's one of the types of things that we generally will do as part of the whole deployment process and working with the customer in order to reinforce that this is a safe technology. It's not going to cause a problem.
Hey, Eric, we have a question coming in from the chat.
Yep.
From Hepta5. How does this product work? Do we just change our endpoints from the RDS DNS to this product? Then we configure the product to point to our database.
Actually, we would reverse the process here, where you would set up everything. Well, somewhat. You would set us up generally in parallel. Okay, so that we're connecting to the database. You can then do testing through us, verify that we're what you're doing. Then you swing over, change your configuration to point to us instead of the typical RDS endpoints, and you're online. If you have a problem, you just swing it right back. Okay, so that's usually, as you're going online, a very easy process to put us in and to take us back out if need be. Okay, we have an implementation team that works with our customers that guide you through the whole process of doing this. In general, we'll just, like in a lower environment, we would set up a single node proxy. It's just an integrated manager and proxy setup, verify the application, make sure that it works properly. Then once you're looking at going into production, we'll take that a step further and use our CloudFormation template to set up an auto scaling group, provide for redundancy, do all that so that when you go into production, you don't have any single point of failure. Okay. This is going to be quick and easy. David's famous last words when installing a new feature, and it's a final project for coding bootcamp 10 minutes prior to the due time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that really happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, we try to make it as seamless for our customers as possible. A lot of the delays that we have in deploying are going to be IT and permissions related issues. Okay, who has authority in the infrastructure to make what changes when? The other question came in. What's the difference between this and Redis? Okay. The interesting part is Redis is a key store, and Elasticache for Redis is you can use as a key store for an application. That's great. You can store the result set that you get from the database in Redis as well. However, there is a lot of difference here. Okay, Redis doesn't know how to invalidate what you're dealing with. Okay, if you want to cache a join between two tables, you have to know when both tables are being changed. Well, Heimdall will parse the SQL queries that are being received from the application, will then use that information to identify what tables have been modified or are in flux. We know what is changing when, and we'll use that to determine whether or not an object is stale or not in the cache layer. So there's a huge amount of intelligence that goes into this, and it's a really, really hard problem. In fact, it's generally said that there are three hard problems in computer science: naming things, cache invalidations, and off by one errors. Actually, it was supposed to be two hard problems in computer science, and then the third one would obviously be an off by one error. But
Oh,
yeah,
I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
yeah, I flubbed on the delivery there. Oh, but the idea is that Heimdall knows what is changing and is able to serve the proper content. Now, that is not to say that you cannot set up rules that result in eventual consistency as well. Okay, you can override our invalidation logic so that, say, writes against a log table aren't going to invalidate prior queries against that log table. It just means that you may not get the stale data out of the cache until it's been refreshed, say, in 5 minutes. So, yes, Hepta 5. So the data in Heimdall cache is always up to date. Technically, no, it's not always up to date. Okay, and it just means that we're guaranteeing that you won't get stale data out of the cache. So, and this leads to some of the other subtleties of cache products that are on the market. So, if you write to a table, uh, Dave, James, I'm gonna see if you can deal with this. Gets this. Uh, if you write to a table, should you go through your cache and throw out all the objects associated with that table, and then maybe repopulate?
That doesn't
Doesn't-
sound right.
Yeah, I would think not.
Okay. You if you that the reality is most cache products that have any sort of invalidation logic, what will happen is they try to go through, and when they invalidate, they delete all the objects that may be associated with that write.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a common Java framework. What's it called? Hibernate, that has a cache layer that's associated with it. Well, with Hibernate, it can know that, okay, you're writing to a particular table. Okay, but what happens when you write and it had prior reads cached against that table is it'll delete those reads. However, what it doesn't know is if another instance of Hibernate on another application server had put objects into the cache that may also be impacted by that write. Okay?
Okay.
So one node is doing a write, the other has stored data into the cache. Well, this one doesn't know to invalidate the objects because of this write, because they're operating independently. Heimdall designed to work as a cluster environment. In fact, we can go into how we came about our design, because it itself is kind of an interesting topic of how we came up with the design. But we designed it so that the two components know what they're doing. Okay, so you can scale out, scale in, and they just keep working together. But one of the key tenets on our cache management is you never walk the cache to delete things. Okay, and another point is cache volatility is not a point in time, it is a range of time. And that's a huge optimizing factor for us. So if you start writing to a table at time A, it is considered volatile until we know everything has been resolved with that write at time B. Between that time, we have to rely for that table that's being modified. that table is considered volatile, and we must go to the database to retrieve any object associated with it to prevent from delivering stale data. So this means if we start a transaction with a change to a table, for the life of that transaction, any tables modified in it are considered volatile. Okay, then at the end, we release the volatility flag so that it can start caching or using read-write split for that table again. But we do this on a table-by-table basis. So if you have 100 tables, one may be volatile, well, another 99 are not. Okay? So that allows you to safely use these features. Okay? And going back to Redis, okay, technically you can have Redis like pull data and such, but you have to write through Redis. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that requires the infrastructure to be designed to use it. And in a lot of cases, it's still going to be a case where you're eventually consistent. Okay, it's a hard problem. We use Redis as a data store, but we're acting as the cop that dictates what traffic goes where. Okay, at what time and what can be pulled out of the cache. Another interesting feature that we use that most applications using Elasticache, Redis, or any other cache do not do is what we call key tracking. Another pop quiz question for you guys. Okay, if you get 15% cache hit rate off of, say, a Redis cluster being used as a key cache, what is going to happen to your performance?
If you get 15%,
Let's say 15%.
That seems low.
Well, understood, but this is kind of a trick question.
Yeah, it seems like if you're missing that much, your performance is going to not be too hot, for sure.
Well, will it help a little? Will it probably not change the performance? Will it harm things?
I think it would. I would think it would harm things a little bit. I mean,
yes.
It's not, because that just seems like that it shouldn't be missing that much. It needs to be hitting more often.
Well, here's the thing: with a cache hit rate of 15% with Heimdall, you generally will get a benefit. If you're traditional using Redis as a key store in the traditional way, you will probably be harming performance. Okay. And the reason for that is because you take a hit penalty going over the wire, finding out if the cache even has the object to begin with. Okay. And that round trip from the application node to the cache node has a penalty. Okay. And if you don't have enough cache hit rate in order to actually offset that penalty, then you're in negative territory performance-wise. Once you have a high enough cache hit rate, you can start getting a benefit. But wait, I said that with 15%, the performance can get better with Heimdall.
Yeah.
How's that? Well, Elasticache, Redis, these other cache engines have what's called key space notification events. When you put an object into the cache, it can notify everything else attached to the cache that that key now exists. So what Heimdall does is we listen to those notifications. We know what keys are in the Elasticache layer. So we don't have to ask it. Is it there? Do you have that key? No. Oh, so guess we've got a penalty. No, we skip that. We keep a list of all the keys locally so that we can look them up and say, nope, it's not there. I'm not even going to ask it.
Okay.
And we just pull the data from the database, and then we can populate it into the Redis cluster. Plus, We also do, and yes, Heimdall uses the Elasticache layer, but have to 5 again. Thank you. The interesting thing here is that you can also have a penalty if you don't code your ingestion process properly, because you've got to take that object and push it over to Redis. So we've developed the code so that it's a multi-threaded process so that we push it to Redis out of path from delivering it to the application. So we don't slow down giving the result just so that we can push it to Redis or to Elasticache. We're doing those as 2 different steps.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the type of optimization that Heimdall has done in order to both be safe and efficient so that we can improve the performance when other solutions would not. Just as an example, the pgpool2 Postgres proxy says in its own documentation, because it claims to have caching with invalidation, if you're not getting at least a 70% cache hit rate, you're probably going to be slowing things down. Okay.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it handles everything, it doesn't have key space notification. It's just going to push things out. It walks the cache on an invalidation. It does all these things that you should not do. Okay. I'm just hoping that nobody on the pgpool2 engineering team or developer team ever sees any of my presentations, because they may get an idea of how to make things better. Okay. But I've been talking about these topics at various forums and such for a while. Yeah, they still haven't made changes that resolve those issues. I've gone through the code of almost all these tools to see how they do their job, and I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
once I understand it, it's like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Eric, we got another question here about what is this? We got the what is the performance increase from switching from Elasticache, and a comparison of maybe the cost. If you can speak to either of those at all.
Okay. Yep. Great. Good question. Now, first off, let's talk about really what is the green field for Heimdall. Where is it that we're coming into play? And it's not necessarily for switching from Elasticache. It's usually putting it in when it was never there to begin with. Okay. It simplifies the infrastructure. If you only have to do caching with a device or software that is doing it for you, is rule driven, you don't have to code to it. Basically, you just have to create one endpoint as if it were the database. You pull your data just like before, but it's just a faster result. Okay. And you can turn off and on caching, etc. So I'm not necessarily going to say that you want to take an application that's using Elasticache and turn it off, because often the applications are caching at an object level, not at a result set level, which is what we do. So it can cache, an application can cache into Redis after processing the data, transforming it, putting it into a usable form that it's going to actually rely on later. So in that case, you are removing the work to do that again. But in some cases, for example, when you only have a certain level of cache hit rate, if you're not taking the time to do things like multi-threaded ingestion, like the key space notification tracking to avoid cache misses, then you may end up in a situation where it's just more efficient to go through Heimdall and not use a direct interface to the cache. We can share the cache with the application. So Elasticache, when running not in cluster mode, has so-called database numbers, where you can split different sets of content. Well, you can configure Heimdall to use a different database number than the application, allowing you to clear cache separately from one another, etc. So you're not necessarily going to have to add a Redis instance just because you're turning on Heimdall. You can use what's already there.
Mm.
The other aspect about how we operate is because we are providing the intelligence, and it's actually a two-layer cache system. There's the local heap that's Heimdall itself, and that's kind of the L1 cache, kind of like a CPU. Well, then there's the L2 cache that would be Elasticache. So the hottest content is going to be in memory on Heimdall already. It's the colder content that we want to keep around that's going to be in Redis. And also, the other benefit of having that content there is if a new Heimdall node comes online, it will read all the keys that are in the Redis instance and know that they're available immediately. So instead of repopulating a cache out of the database on a new instance of Heimdall coming online, it can pull all that information from Elasticache itself. Okay. So there's pieces here that all interact. It's a great question, but it really depends on the environment. On the flip side, if you've got something like a PHP application, let's say WordPress. WordPress has a Redis database cache option that you can enable.
Yeah.
It will slow down your system if you use it. Okay. It may make it more scalable, but it will slow things down because PHP, with the way that it works, spins up a process. What does it do first if you've enabled the Redis cache and it wants to do database query? It establishes a new connection to Redis. Okay. Asks, do you have the object? Because it has no state.
Yeah.
Okay. Asks, do you have it? Oh, you don't? Fine. I need to go to the database and then I need to put it back in. So you've got to establish a connection to Redis and the database. Well, with Heimdall in the loop, you just connect to the database and say, this is what I want. Heimdall will deliver it to you whether it came out of the cache or not. So, and it maintains the connections to Redis, to the database. They're all persistent. We don't have to establish new connections to get that data. We just reuse the ones we already have. With PHP, you're not going to have that. Okay. So different programming environments have different pros and cons on how you do things as well.
Okay. I mean, when you say it like that, it makes more sense. Because originally, when you first said it, using Redis is going to slow down, I was like, huh? And then when you put it that way, it makes
it's
more
adding
sense for
steps.
Sure. Yeah, I get it now.
Okay.
Yeah. Very good, Erik.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, it probably took us 3 years working on the cache engine to really tune it, to get it to the point where it consistently can improve performance, or at least in the worst case scenario, not make it worse. Okay. But in testing other solutions, many times you can get a worst case scenario.
Yeah. You're always supposed to plan for the worst case anyway, for sure.
Yeah.
But my question is, we've talked about Elasticache and Redis, for example. With Heimdall, are any of these like required, or are they optional integrations, or how does that kind of work?
Okay. Great question there. Okay. In some cases it's required, in some cases it's optional. Okay. If you are in an environment where you only want one proxy active at a time. It does not need Elasticache.
Okay.
Okay. Now, why would that be a situation? Okay. Let's say you have an application that is a SaaS application where you have a different user or different database or both per customer data set. You could have 1,000 data sets on one database. Okay,
Yeah.
easily. Okay. Now, each of those users is going to need their own set of connections to the database when they're active. Well, if you split those connections up across multiple proxy nodes, you could have user A on both proxy node A and B. And in a case like that, your connection pooling efficiency goes down.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a situation like that, it may be best to set up an auto scaling group, but with only one active node and a hot standby. Okay. In a case like that, if the active node goes down, yes, all the connections are going to have to reestablish, but they do so through a single node, which was the hot standby, and you can maintain connection pooling efficiency. In a case like that, you don't necessarily need to have Redis because the two nodes aren't going to care necessarily what they're doing. Okay, you don't have to have communication between the two. But if you have two standby or two nodes that are active at the same time, not only do we use Elasticache for the cache itself, but, and this is another piece that most people know about with the Redis software and Elasticache, is that it has a pub sub interface. We use the pub sub interface for communicating our invalidation information. So it allows for distributed invalidations to happen. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking up. I just looked up. We actually have some documentation about that right here. I'm gonna drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
I just googled it real quick. Pub sub.
Yep. So and it's the pub sub interface that is used for the key space notification as well.
Okay.
So somebody had made a note that they should write that down. Oh, I guess that
Yeah,
was you, James.
that was me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with that, so I'm gonna look it up later for sure.
Yeah. Okay. It's a really interesting feature, and it can allow you to optimize cache solutions, especially in distributed environment, to a high degree.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. David, did you have any questions or anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean that was a lot. um,
If you want, we can get to a little bit more of the fluffy anecdotal stuff, and then I can get to my demo part.
yeah, no, it was just a lot of that started going over my head. Don't really, I know enough about database to be, a little bit dangerous, but there was some parts of that I was just kind of hanging on every word, like, wow, this is cool, but wow, yeah.
I
So
could dig so far down into the weeds of database technology at this point that you come out with poison ivy.
I don't doubt that. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm already gonna go get the Bactine or whatever. Um, yeah.
But yeah, if you have anything else, any of your anecdotes or anything that you wanted to show, like I'm all for it. Let's
You
do it.
know, why don't I get into the demo portion? You can share my if you can show my screen.
Yep.
I can go into some of this and how all this works. And then if we have any time left, there are a couple of other anecdotes that involve caching in my past that I'm sure that the audience will appreciate and you guys will get some humor out of.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
Okay.
Before we jump into the demo, let me do a quick check-in. If you're just tuning in right now, welcome to Howdy Partner. We bring in partners every week, learn their story, learn about their solutions, get some little bit hands-on with their stuff. I'm James Spencer, my coworker, associate, Mr. David Daniels is here, and today we have Heimdall Data, and we're talking caching and database proxy and really deep stuff that I'm trying to remember so I can look up later. A lot of it. I mean, in seriousness, it's actually pretty interesting. And the parts that I'm trying to, Eric's doing a great job trying to walk us along the process. That's where okay, yeah, that's where all my little comments are coming from. And we're gonna dive into to a little bit of the demo right now, Eric.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, cool.
So just in order to provide a little blurb, yes, we're Amazon, or we're an Amazon partner. You can see all the stuff that we're validated for. One thing that I do want to call out, that we are a Redshift ready product. If you have Redshift in your environment, we are the only proxy that is Redshift ready. The RDS proxy does not interact with Redshift. So if you have connection problems, connection count issues with Redshift, we can help. And going into our demo, what I have on the screen here is our central manager. The way that our software is architected is that you have a central manager, and then it manages the configuration for the proxies. That you can have one or more proxies handling traffic with load balancing, network load balancing, etc. If you go into our documentation, in fact, you go into Amazon specific, you go to CloudFormation, you can find the template that we use for deploying our NLB right there. Want to download it? There it is. Okay. And it talks about all the different architectures that we support with a template. We have all kinds of other documentation on everything involving Amazon and everything else. And many of our customers actually, just by going through our documentation, they are able to get our software online without ever contacting us. Although I will say we do encourage people to contact our support team, if only to do a final walkthrough of the configuration before going into production, to ensure that we don't spot something that you've done wrong that will cause you headaches. Because actually, this is a very appropriate comment given that tomorrow is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I like to say that we operate on the dark side of the force. Okay.
Oh, nice.
We do things with a database that DBAs and database designers never intended to do with the database. But you can shoot yourself in the foot with our technology. Okay. If you can turn on caching and turn off invalidation and everything, and if you do it wrong, you can completely muck up your data. Okay. But we default to as safe a configuration as absolutely possible. Okay. But we are handing you a loaded gun. Okay. So leverage our support team. They're here to help you in order to make sure that when you shoot that gun, you don't hit your foot.
Yeah. I can definitely tell that C was one of your main languages with those kind of comments. That's exactly what C is. It's powerful, but you can shoot yourself in the foot. Be careful.
Yep. Okay. So documentation, support. We actually even have a support portal that you can come in.
Okay.
The request free trial. This is kind of how we guide new customers in through our entire evaluation process to ensure that we know what your pain points are, what you want to have done If you come in, basically we prompt you for all the different things that you will help us ensure that we can support you appropriately. Okay, but getting back to the demo itself. So we have our dashboard here. I have three so-called VDBs. One is for an application called Udo, which is kind of an open source enterprise ERP solution. It has a whole bunch of different modules, e-commerce, timesheet management, all kinds of stuff. We use the e-commerce module as a demo environment, but it's a third-party unmodified application that we actually have quite a few customers that are using Udo with our software to help it scale the database side. I also have a Redshift VDB and then a WordPress VDB. So Udo uses Postgres, Redshift is Redshift, and WordPress is MySQL. So just to demonstrate that all this stuff works and does what you want it to do. But I'm going to focus on Udo for the moment. If we come over to the dashboard, what we're going to see is that we're getting about 1,000 queries per second. I have a load generator pointed at the Udo front-end website. And all this is live. Hold on 1 second. Okay. All this is live. So no caching is enabled. We do not have read-write split enabled. I don't have anything turned on. Well, everything here is rule driven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to rule number 4, and I'm going to turn on caching. And I have no intelligence being specified here. I'm just saying cache everything. Okay. And I'm going to commit, and then I'm going to come over. Okay. And we see that the caching kicks in. And with this application enabled, we're getting 70, 80, 90% cache hit rate. Okay. And that actually is the cache rule that most of our Udo customers use. Just try to cache everything. Okay. What it caches is what it caches, and it's intelligent enough to do it safely. So if we see writes going on, select for updates, it knows a select for update is not cacheable. Okay, even though it's a select, it needs to lock rows on the database.
Yeah.
So you can't cache it. It has to go there. And you can see the overall cache hit rate is great. Okay. Next, I'm going to go in and I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to turn off caching and I'm going to turn on reader eligible, which is the read-write split rule. And we're going to come back over here. This is all just transitionary as the configuration changes. Queries per second. Okay.
Geez.
Wait. Okay, that's to the writer. Hold on. I've got something not set up right. It looks like reader eligible. Why is that going to the writer?
So I've never heard what is grid cache? I see in the query time.
Oh, so that's a generic term that we're using for any external cache engine. So Elasticache, Hazelcast, we support a couple. So it's basically just anything out there. Usually they can be distributed in nature, like cluster mode. So that's just the term that we use for the grid cache.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it looks like I am getting the infamous demo issue, where if people are watching it and you're demoing it, it's not working quite right. So I'm not going to dig into that too much at the moment. But the reader eligible in general would offload the majority of reads instead of the cache. And then you can do this, you can do caching and read write split as well.
So once you have all this set up, it's that easy, huh? You just
Yep.
check some boxes and do some drop downs. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is actually an internal development build, so I think that's why the writer is not working quite right. But I'm not going to go that far.
Okay.
There are a couple of new features here that we're just rolling out. To kind of go into the types of integration that we've done with AWS. And this is part of the partnership program. Your SAs and the people that we've worked with have pushed for improvements in the overall ecosystem of how we work with AWS as a whole. So if you come down here, we have an AWS CloudWatch option. If I simply check that, okay, it will allow exporting of metrics into CloudWatch that you can then pull up. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. You can trust me that it's there. I've got some other demos that are videos that include that. So that's one aspect of integrating with Amazon. Second is, let's go to this wizard. AWS Detect. Okay, I have a Postgres cluster defined in the same region. Instead of having to enter in all the information about it, come on.
So you said you have integration with CloudWatch. Are there any other like partners like God, what can I think right now? Like Datadog, for example, like those kind of things that'll have it. You can push those metrics to as well.
Not at the moment, but it's coming.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, CloudWatch was the easiest thing for us to just get set up and working with it. And
Yeah.
given that so many of our customers are Amazon, it makes it easy for our customers as well. But with like this API integration, it makes it easy to set things up. If I had specified, if I had a Redis or Elasticache cluster, I could have brought that in. Next review.
Oh, okay.
And let's next submit. Okay, and now I have a VDB for that cluster. There's an overlap with one of the other VDBs, so there's a conflict here. But the interesting thing here is if I had multiple nodes enabled on my cluster, it would auto detect that and add those in here automatically. Okay, so we actually do not use the DNS endpoints for reader and writer. We use the endpoints for each node individually, which allows us to segregate the traffic, classify it, and send it to different nodes with different priorities if we wanted. Okay. So that makes it very easy to set up. Then, so we integrate with the RDS API. We integrate with CloudWatch. If you go into the logs tab, if you wanted to submit logs to Heimdall in order to provide information on the ticket, because the logs may be sizable, you can just enter a ticket number, send, and it will send the logs to us so that we can analyze and help you out. So you don't have to worry about downloading the logs, putting it in Dropbox or S3 yourself. And that goes to a write-only S3 bucket unless you happen to be logged in as one of our employees. So that's kind of a nice little convenience feature. The marketplace for billing. We auto detect if you have started the instance from the AWS marketplace, and it bypasses all licensing functionality as well, making that easy as well. Etc. Documentation. I can't tell you how much the AWS team, every time they do a well architected review.
Yep.
Okay, you guys are laughing here.
Yeah.
But every time we're pushed to add more, do more, explain more. So that's something that as a partner, Amazon is pushing us to do better as part of the customer excellence. So we appreciate that
Yeah.
after
That
the
that
fact.
yeah. Not when they're telling you, oh, you need to add this to your documentation. You need to add this. You need to add this. You need to change this. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But I I like documentation because I mean I'm a self-admitted I don't know what I'm doing, so I need it for sure.
Yep. So, uh, and
Okay.
if you look at our documentation, I mean, it gets into a lot of stuff at this point.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, it covers almost every aspect. As I said, many of our customers, they do get everything online themselves, and so sometimes they go into production and don't even tell us. But that's not what
Okay.
I encourage customers to do.
Okay. So that was the next thing I was going to kind of ask was more of like the logistical side of the solution. Like so it's typically a customer deployed type of type of product, and but you also have that support that you want to come in and make sure that everything is done correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
So, it's not a SaaS solution.
Okay, got it.
We
Yeah.
do not sell it as a SaaS because we're dealing with the actual queries and customer data. We
Yeah,
do
that
not
makes
feel
sense.
it's appropriate to serve as a SaaS solution. But we want it to be as easy for the customer to manage as possible. So, like with the CloudFormation template, okay, we document it here, but we will literally guide you through the whole process of setting it up, okay, on a support call,
Okay.
okay, and explain to you how everything works and do any tuning with you.
Okay. And then in that dashboard I saw, RBAC type like users, admin, like how does that integrated? Is that like part of the solution or does it use like uh, you know, AWS SSO or
At
Okta or how does that work?
at the moment, it is standalone user management for the central console.
Okay.
Okay, does allow two-factor authentication with Google Authenticator or Authy or anything else like that.
Got it. Okay.
So that helps out with the security aspect here. We've targeted end of this quarter to have these users integrated with LDAP authentication as well. We already have LDAP authentication available in the database authentication piece as well. Okay. So
Okay.
with that, we've got like simple LDAP mode or complex LDAP mode. And for complex environments, we even have what's called SQL driven, where you can effectively configure authentication parameters on a per user basis by pointing to a table that is on the database itself. So with that, you can do per user authentication mechanism. You could say Joe or say David should authenticate off of Active Directory on one particular server. James, you authenticate off a completely different Active Directory server. And
Mm,
the admin user is uh, authenticated directly off the database directly with no third party interfaces because it's super user. You want to be able to log in all the time and you just want to have direct credentials with it. Okay. The fact is that this feature set is often used as part of integrating into a much larger enterprise environment. And often that enterprise environment spans outside of Amazon. Okay. So that we're primarily driven with Active Directory there, because that's where users have pushed us for. Okay. So yeah, it looks like you guys are criticizing us on not having AWS SSO.
Oh,
But
no.
yeah.
Not at all. I was just curious, like what kind of, if there was any of those integrations. Yeah, no, but that's cool. That's having those Active Directory options is good. Yeah.
Yeah. So and what this allows us to do, there's actually another feature here. Yeah, we're not even going to get into my other stories. But this allows us to do what I call zero touch user management. So not only with this can you authenticate the users off of Active Directory, but we can also do group extraction and use that information to push a role into the database based on the user's group, and we can set up their credentials as part of the login process. So on day one, when a new employee comes in, say into the data science group, and they need to be able to access a particular data set, then they can have access to the data just based on their Active Directory configuration. Okay. Nothing else is needed to be set up once the baseline configuration is in place.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice feature that we're working with some Fortune 500 companies to integrate so that they don't have to manage the users on their databases. We have one customer right now that has over 5,000 roles on one database.
Oh God.
Okay. And we're working with them to migrate their authentication over to Active Directory. Okay. Another aspect of that is that when you're doing the SQL driven, you can specify parameters that even allow you to go through Active Directory, but if it fails and we've never seen them before, go to the database and allow a pass-through authentication. As soon as their authentication aligns with Active Directory, they are no longer allowed to go directly against the database without going through us. So it allows for a seamless migration of users from a database authenticated environment to an Active Directory authenticated system where you don't have to bring all the users online at once. You can bring them on in batches, and otherwise they're not disrupted in their daily activities. So it makes the transition much easier as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot here.
No. Yeah. But that's super. I mean, that's great that you don't have to manage. Like you said, if you already have it set up, you just, it makes it fast and easy to bring people on and off based on their roles in their directory. Borgatig is asking about authentication in SQL SA in the chat. Borgatig, what exactly do you mean by that? I'm not familiar. Maybe Erik is. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm not
Or if,
sure what the question is supposed to
yeah,
be.
if you're still there and you want to like rephrase it, we can try and get it answered.
Yep.
Yeah, this is, can people install? Well, it's not quite related, but I don't believe we have any OS X on EC2. Anyway,
There are some Mac instances, aren't there?
that's one I'd have to look up. I'm not familiar with it off the top of my head. Super administrator. Okay, authentication SQL super administrator. So I still don't. I'm still trying to understand your question.
there is the authentication into the console itself. You can be either an administrator or read-only user
Okay,
for
yeah.
the console. As a read-only user, it limits you beyond what you would expect. For example, you cannot directly access the logs because the logs may contain information that's too sensitive. But the analytics tab that allows you to, for example, see what queries without parameters. If you notice, none of these queries have a parameter listed. They have question marks. If we go down, like here, that question mark was a parameter that we removed for the analytics tab. So this makes it much safer for a read-only user to understand and see what's going on. But if I go into the logs tab, I could see potentially the actual parameters as well as part of it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and this is another aspect of the functionality that we have is visibility of what's going on. And what's interesting is that often we can see queries that, for example, the performance insights does not record
Mhm.
because we're recording every query as it goes through. Performance insights gets a snapshot periodically of what queries are executing at a given moment. And there are even some queries that never show up in Performance Insights. They're not showing up in here at the moment because of the way that I've got the rules set up. But like transaction control queries do not show up in Performance Insights, but they can be extremely verbose and happen all the time, and they can slow down your application. So we generally, by default, would include that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, you can set up these rules to actually for your like for these are there any sort of like managed rules like that you have, or do they all have to be like custom written?
We have a feature that it is slated for later this year. If you go into the documentation, we do have things like some specifics for Udo. But what we're going to do is we're going to tie that into the AWS wizard or the configuration wizard so that you can pick your application. And like if we come down here, properties and rules, you can turn on different features, but there'll be another tab here of select your application.
Okay.
And then it'll pick the rules based on that we manage from a library.
Okay.
Okay. So that's something that we will be adding into the future. But we also, again, help customers often. Like if someone calls us up with Udo, we already have a known configuration set that will work with them to implement.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool whenever you keep saying there's more coming. Like this is already seems pretty robust. So when you're saying, "Oh, there's more coming," like it's cool that there's going to be even more on,
Oh, we have ideas on how to integrate with AI. Okay,
Oh,
we have other
the big
stuff
thing.
going on. This is very pie in the sky type thing, but the reality is that most data applications that interact with a database have very fixed patterns of behaviors that happen all the time. Why not take a look at that and then look at how you can use AI to restructure that work in order to make it a more efficient workflow? So you're
Okay.
looking at what is happening and then saying this would be better. Or predictive querying.
Yeah.
So if you know that you have this, then this happens, and they all interact with parameters that are in common, then you can use the AI to say, okay, when you see this happen, automatically generate these other 3 queries against a database and load them up into the into basically kind of a workflow queue or cache, so that even if they're not technically cacheable in general, you can get them before the application has even asked for them.
I like that. That seems that seems super cool. You're already you're already getting it ready before the application even asks for it, like, oh, I'm gonna need this, and I already got you, and then they're like, here you go. That's awesome. Wow.
Okay. So there's all kinds of things that we can do as as a piece of software that's sitting between the two. Heimdall is all seeing. Okay. Why can't it predict what's going to happen next? Right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking of like the Marvel MCU and the mythology, but
Yeah. Cool. That was awesome. Well, thank you, Erik.
okay.
It was
We're coming right up on the end of the time slot. I wish I had time for more of the stories, but maybe next time or
well.
the next show.
Do you have anything you want to plug, like a LinkedIn or a blog or anything? Maybe that they can sync up
Oh,
with you there somewhere, Twitter, or anything like
if you
that.
look for Heimdall Data, we have a YouTube channel. That's
Okay.
probably the more active. We haven't done a whole lot with like Twitter and such. But YouTube, any of the presentations that I've done, I've presented at other conferences that have been recorded as well. So they dive into some of these topics, some a little bit more in depth, etc. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I could imagine you get called for a lot because you're like beyond 500 level. It seems like on this stuff. This is great.
I can tell you some facts about databases that the people that wrote the code will contradict me on. Okay. Until I
Okay.
prove it.
Okay. I thought you were
Okay.
about to give us a story that was like one of those things where the writer of the programming language applied for a job and they didn't give it to him because they said that he didn't have enough experience, kind of thing. But no, if
I,
you can prove it, if you can back it up, then yeah, for sure.
I've just had to deal with so many different customers in so many different environments. At the same time, if I had to like actually write a lot of SQL, I would fail. I know the problem areas. I don't know the stuff that just works.
Mm. So yeah, it's all right. It's too easy. It just works. I don't know that. Yeah, I got to dig deeper.
Bring me in when something breaks, then I can
Yeah,
help you.
yeah. I wish I had that problem.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think it's usually the opposite for me, at least. And I know what works, and then I don't know what works until I come across it. But
Yeah.
that's what experience gets you.
We,
So
we don't get called in for simple environments. So,
Yeah. Cool.
okay.
All right. Well,
awesome.
thank you, Erik.
Thank you.
And yeah, and with that, thank you everyone for watching. If you want to, I dropped a whole bunch of links. Please fill out our survey. Take 30 seconds. It's really short. It's like 6 things. There's an AWS Marketplace link we dropped in the chat. Check out Heimdall Data there. You can check them out on their website. What else? Next week, we're not going to be on next week, actually. There's a 24-hour cost optimization stream going next week. So if you're looking to reduce cost, to optimize your cost, it'll be on the whole day. You'll have all day to check in and get some good information and learn more there. Cool.
Can I mention, if
Yeah.
you want to reduce your database costs, often we'll do a review of your RDS configuration with you, just as part of going through your environment, as part of our setup.
No, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
That's one of the pillars, the well-architected pillars. Is, I mean, we're it's a company. We want to make money, but we want to make sure we do the right thing. We don't want to waste. We do, the more better your cost optimization is, hopefully the more you'll use it. So it works out in the end. Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Take care.